So here's the situation. My dad passed away 3.5 years ago when my half-brother was 11 years old. My dad and his ex-wife had been separated for about 5 years before his death, but they weren't legally divorced. During that time, they didn't really have much contact, and she didn't join any family gatherings or events. Even during the funeral, she wasn't there when my aunt, my grandma, and I, 32 female, were, and I didn't have a close relationship with her. My dad was also struggling financially, and he didn't leave anything behind, apart from a small boat he had purchased in my name, which I sold and put the money aside for my brother's future, and started paying towards his needs, such as education fees and monthly allowances for him. My dad had still been supporting my half-brother's mom financially, even though they weren't living together, and I only had to communicate with her a few times after his passing about my brother's expenses. Here's where things get tricky. My aunt has been paying the rent for my dad's ex-wife and my half-brother for the last 3.5 years, as my dad's ex-wife claims to be struggling financially. She works full-time, but also receives a pension through my dad. Now the landlord wants them to move out, and my aunt, who has been helping with rent all this time, is put in a position to pay for the rent in the future apartment. My dad's ex-wife is now asking me for help with rent, claiming she's still struggling. I'm honestly conflicted. I don't have a strong relationship with her, and I don't feel it's my responsibility to help her out with rent, especially when I'm already helping my brother. I've made it clear that I can't help her with the rent, but she's persistent and threatening to tell my brother that I'm this bad sister who's not helping him out with their housing situation, and she told me if I'm not helping her out with rent, I shouldn't act like a good sister and help out on anything else as well. I feel like it's not fair that I should take on this burden when I'm already looking out for my brother's well-being, and especially when my aunt has already been helping her all this time. My primary focus is on my brother's future, and I don't just want to take on any more responsibilities that aren't my own. I also want to mention that while my dad financially supported my dad's ex-wife when they were separated, their relationship was strained, and I never felt close to her. I'm struggling with whether I'm being unreasonable for not helping her, even though she's in a tough situation. So am I the a-hole for not wanting to help her out with rent, even though she's claiming that she is struggling? Not the a-hole. She is a manipulative person and really unkind, threatening you with ill words and access to your stepbrother. The bigger question is, why does she not have enough money? She receives your dad's pension, and she will qualify for money for your brother through Social Security, if in the USA, unless your dad is not on the birth certificate. What did this woman save in the past 3.5 years when her rent was being paid? If you help her, never give her money directly. Before you pay a cent, she needs to sign up for all and any social support services. Examples: subsidized housing, utility assistance, food stamps, nutritional assistance, free Wi-Fi, free health care. If she tells you she was denied, she needs to provide the rejection correspondence. If she is receiving help, she can work with a social worker, as with budgeting, and show you a full account of incoming cash versus bills. She will threaten you through your stepbrother no matter what you do, even if you help. If you do pay a bill, she provides her account number and company name so you can pay it directly. This may not be advice you wanted, but there is a lot to manage here. Her ask. In the meantime, negotiate how you can spend time with your brother. Convey to him and ensure he has your contact info in the event she cuts you off. Best to you. Not the a-hole. Tell her fine, she wins. You will no longer help out with anything, because it is not your job to help with her rent. Keep putting money aside for your half-brother until he is 18, and give it to him then, or find other ways to help him so that he knows you still care. I know rent is crazy right now, but how is she not paying rent with a full-time job, your dad's pension, and you helping out with the child? Not the a-hole. She has a full-time job and a pension. You've been paying for your half-brother, and your aunt has been paying her rent for the last 3 years. So where's her money going? With all that assistance for so long, even with housing being expensive, she should be able to rent somewhere, even if she needs a roomie. Keep putting away for your brother, but don't give her a dime otherwise. Edit. Update. Thank you everyone for supporting my decision. I'm overwhelmed by the support I've received. I just want to provide a bit more context about the countries involved without going into too much detail. I'm originally from a Middle Eastern country and moved to Europe a couple of years ago to work under better conditions. My brother and his mom still live in my home country. Things have been tough there, just like everywhere else, and she's not the only one struggling. In our culture, families help each other out. However, even though my family loves my brother and has done everything to support him, we feel like she is using us at this point, and I don't want to give in to her manipulation. My mom was a single parent who worked 2 jobs to provide me with housing and all my needs until I was able to provide for myself. So her attitude is really frustrating me even more. As some of you suggested, I don't want to help her with budgeting planning or finding a new apartment because I'm afraid that if I help her even a little, she'll keep asking for more. I also think she wants to maintain an expensive lifestyle. She isn't into D or gambling, as far as I know, but she does spend a ton on luxury cosmetics, branded clothes, and even some Botox and similar treatments. Regarding taking my brother to live with me, it would be very complicated due to visa processes, but if things get worse, I will do everything in my power to arrange that. I told her that life is tough for everyone. I'm in no position to pay rent, and I'm not going to send her any money from my brother's account for her rent because he will need it more in the future. It is her responsibility to find somewhere to live within her budget. I also told her I don't want her to contact me ever again about anything related to this topic, as I don't believe it is my responsibility to help her. She was shameless enough to say that she didn't want the full rent, just my share, that I had to support for my brother's sake. I will send my brother a text message in a couple of days, letting him know that I love him. I'm always there for him, and he can reach out to me personally whenever he wants. I'm also considering giving him a debit card. She has until the end of this month to leave the current apartment, and I'm waiting to see how things will unfold. Update 2. Over the weekend, I realized I was blocked on socials by the ex-wife, and also my brother removed me as well. I reached out to my brother directly because I wanted to make sure he knew that none of this was his fault and that I will always be there for him. I didn't want to say anything that could damage his relationship with his mom, but I needed him to know that I did nothing against him and that he can always reach out to me. To my relief, he responded right away and reassured me that he has no hard feelings toward me at all. He already knew that a lot of what his mom told him wasn't true, and even said he was actually happy about the decision I made. He told me that if he were in my position, he would have done the same thing. One of the most upsetting parts of our conversation was when he admitted that he never liked asking me for money through his mom because it made him feel like a beggar, but she insisted on it. He always told me that she had been looking for an apartment way beyond her budget and had been trying to collect money from different people to afford it, which confirmed my suspicions. I also learned that now they have found an apartment within whatever budget she has. What really broke my heart was when he said he needed to delete our messages because his mom sometimes checks his phone, and if she found out we talked, she would be very upset with him. It made me realize just how much control she has over him. I reassured him that the money I was sending for him is still his, kept safely with me, and that when he needs anything, I'll find a way to help him, but it won't be through his mom anymore. He understood and seemed relieved. He also told me that he's already thinking about his future carefully and wants to choose a profession where he can be financially independent, so he never has to worry about money. Honestly, I was happily surprised by how mature and self-aware he is for a 15-year-old. Despite everything, he's handling the situation with so much understanding and perspective, and it makes me even prouder to be his sister. For now, I will keep in touch with him privately to make sure he knows he's not alone. I told him that when he grows up, I'll be there to support him, especially for things like university. He knows that no matter what happens, I will always have his back. Edit. I'm not giving him a debit card or anything, as clearly he doesn't need or want it. I will save the money for his future. In the last 4 years, my brother lost his first wife, the mother of his 13-year-old son and 12-year-old daughter, met his second wife at a widow's support group, and started hooking up with her within 8 months of both their spouses' deaths, introduced her to the kids and realized they didn't like it, moved her in and married her anyway, had a kid with her, and got her pregnant again, current. Now he's shocked the kids are disinterested in building a relationship with his wife and don't understand his younger child or the unborn baby siblings. Family members suggested therapy to my brother a few times and giving the kids some more time to adjust to their mom being gone before moving in someone else and marrying her. I was one of them. But he dismissed it. He said everything would be fine. The part where I come in was brought up after a fight between him and the kid at our sister's house. It was her 10-year-old's birthday and we were all present. Siblings' photos were being taken throughout the party, both birthday kid and siblings and other siblings present. My brother wanted a photo of all 3 of his kids, but the older 2 refused. He tried to pass the 8-month-old to them and neither would hold her. He said he wanted a sibling photo, and they said it would just be the two of them then. It ended up in a fight over the half title, and my brother asked if she was a half of a person or half related to them. They said to them, yes, she was, and so was the baby his wife was expecting. His son said that he'd be out of the house before either would remember them, so it wasn't his problem to worry about their feelings when my brother brought up the feelings of the younger kids and how upset they'd be to have that rejection. Other stuff was argued over, but the two kids made it clear they didn't love their half-sibling and weren't willing to try and love her either. A few days after the party, my brother came to my house, and he said things were messed up and he was tired of our parents and sisters doing nothing to help. I asked what he expected them to do. He said that we could all get through to his kids that they have another sibling, and one more on the way, and another mother figure, and their family is grown, and they need to be open to loving and accepting them. I pointed out our mom had spoken to them about it before, about at least not outright rejecting the idea of a friendly relationship, but they were still unhappy with things and didn't listen. He said we could have done better. I told him we tried to tell him, but he refused to listen, and there was nothing more we could do. That he was their dad and had the final say. Then he said we should do more. I said we couldn't, and that he made a mess of blending his family and there was nothing I or anyone could do to change it. I said the whole thing was on him. He said I was as bad as our family and we're meant to be brothers. And where's the compassion for him and his wife who lost spouses already and just wanted a family together before it was too late? Am I the a-hole? He doesn't get to put his children in a blender, and he certainly isn't entitled to use you as one of the blades. Not the a-hole. Try to be there for your niece and nephew if you can. Where does this guy get off? Actually saying, where's the compassion for him and his wife who lost spouses already? When he gave zero ducks that his children lost their mother, and he replaced her like he was changing the sheets. I know I've read something similar before, but hey, those who are in similar positions haven't posted. Here goes. Not the a-hole. OP, your brother put his desire before everything else, including the kids that should have come first. He made the mess, and now he's trying, apparently as usual, not to take any responsibility for it. It isn't anyone's place to talk to the kids about accepting anybody. That just tells them point blank what they feel doesn't matter in regards to the situation. By the way, telling kids their feelings don't matter is opening a door for people with ill intentions towards the kids. So don't do that for duck's sake. When they are old enough, they will get the F out of that house and lose Dad's number before they've even stepped off the front stoop in their haste to leave. I do wonder what kind of father this guy was before the first wife died, because from this, I'm guessing he was very hands-off. A couple of weeks ago, I found out I'm pregnant. My husband and I had been talking about starting a family for a while, so this was supposed to be an exciting moment for us. However, during a conversation about prenatal testing, I told him that if I found out the baby had a severe genetic condition, such as Down syndrome, I would choose to terminate the pregnancy. I also shared my belief that it is extremely selfish to knowingly bring a child into the world with serious medical or developmental challenges. To me, it would be unfair to the child, to myself, and to my husband. Raising a child with severe disabilities is an enormous lifelong commitment, one that affects every aspect of a family's life, and I don't believe it is responsible to willingly choose that path when there's an option to prevent it. I also said that either raising a child like that or having a hereditary condition and choose to be pregnant, instead of adopting, for example, is extremely selfish as well. My husband was horrified. He said he never realized I felt this way and that he couldn't believe I would even consider terminating a pregnancy just because the child wouldn't be perfect. He accused me of being cold, pro-eugenist, and lacking empathy, saying that every child deserves love regardless of their challenges. He also strongly disagreed with my opinion that people with hereditary conditions should think twice before having children, calling it an extreme and disturbing mindset. Since then, things between us have been tense, and now he says he is seriously considering divorce. He told me that we have completely different values when it comes to family, and that he doesn't think he can stay married to someone who sees things this way. I was shocked that he would take it this far, but he says he doesn't want to raise children with someone who believes in selective reproduction. I never expected this conversation to lead to such a massive rift in our marriage. I don't see my stance as cruel, just practical and responsible. Am I the a-hole for being honest about my beliefs, even though they are making my husband want to leave me? I'm old enough that I have two elderly friends with severely disabled children. S, 83, has a daughter and a son who are both high needs, physically able, but autistic and low IQ. Her children are now in their 60s. Nowadays, her husband and her would have been offered genetic counseling after their daughter was born. Caring for two high-needs children broke up their marriage. T, 60, had a Down syndrome daughter, but was only 37 when she had her, and so was not offered an amniocentesis test as she was then considered low risk. She is widowed and has to consider finding sheltered accommodation for her daughter, as she will never be fully independent. Neither of you are in the wrong, but I doubt your marriage will survive this as your views are incompatible. You need to be in marriage counseling together. Even your medical provider can set you up with a genetic counselor. It seems like you have a fundamental difference in values. Unfortunate to find out when you're about to become parents. You should be honest about your beliefs, but you may have to live with the consequences. Living with the consequences being the key factor here. I have to question how close the husband has been to the experience of living with the consequences of having a special needs child who will never be able to care for themselves or leave home, who will outlive you but never be capable of living alone or holding employment. I think either decision is valid, but calling extreme disabilities or developmental problems being not perfect is short-sighted at best. Also, if he decides to bail because it's too much, which lots of men do in all kinds of situations, including just having a baby period, or their wife getting cancer, OP will doubtless be saddled with the majority expectation of care. The stakes are less for him whether he wants to admit that or not. He's not carrying and giving birth, and he's not carrying the bias of the court system that he should have primary custody or responsibility just because he's the mom. I, 28 female, have been married to my husband, 32 male, for 3 years. We have a 1-year-old daughter together. Up until recently, I thought I could count on him when I truly needed him. But last week, he proved me completely wrong. I had been falling off for a couple of days, fatigued, nauseous, just generally unwell. Then one morning, I woke up with a fever, chills, and a deep sense that something was really wrong. I was so weak I could barely get out of bed. Taking care of our daughter felt impossible. I called my husband at work and told him I needed him to come home. He promised he would. An hour passed, then 2. He kept texting me, saying he was just finishing up something and would leave soon. Then he claimed he was stuck in traffic. Then he said he was on his way but had to stop for gas. At this point, my fever was getting worse, and I was struggling to even sit up without feeling dizzy. I told him it was urgent. He reassured me he was almost there. But something felt off. So I texted one of his coworkers, someone I knew he was close with. The response I got sent a chill down my spine. He hasn't left yet. He's still here. I was furious and terrified. I immediately called my neighbor, a kind older woman. She came over right away, helped me get dressed, and drove me to the hospital. Turns out, I had a severe asymptomatic urinary tract infection that had turned into a serious kidney infection. My heart rate was dangerously high, and the doctors told me that if I had waited much longer, I could have gone into septic shock. 2 hours later, while I was lying in that hospital bed, shaking from fever and hooked up to an IV, my husband finally decided to show up. I didn't even want to look at him. He tried to explain, saying he didn't realize it was that bad, and that he was just trying to wrap things up at work. But I can't get over the fact that he lied to me over and over, while I was at home struggling to stay conscious. If my neighbor hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened to me. I feel so betrayed. If he could ignore me in a life-threatening situation, what does that say about our marriage, about our future, about our daughter's safety if something ever happens again? I don't know what to do. Would you be able to trust your partner after something like this? Yeah, no. I couldn't do this either. If you had waited for him and gone into septic shock and probably ultimately died, what would he have done then? That could have 100% been prevented if he just came home when you asked. He gives more loyalty to a job that'll just replace him when it's his time, over his wife, who he chose to love in sickness and health. I went through something very similar with a now ex. I tried to get past it, but I just knew in my heart after that he wasn't reliable and wouldn't prioritize me even in the most dire of circumstances. And that's a hard thing to move past, even without children. OP's husband not only did not prioritize OP, but also their child. What if Opie had passed out and something happened to that kid too? I don't think there's any coming back from this.